Firstly, thank you for all the support you guys showed on my last video. It means a lot for a small channel like mine. Now, Disco Elysium, in my personal opinion, is a game that is a must-play for those who do not know what it is like to embrace oneself. For those who feel like an outcast, the bastard, the scapegoat, the dark horse, the bad guy, the black sheep of the family. I'm pretty sure the developers of this game never intentionally made the game teach you, the player, about these things, but by making a game that is very complex, it inherently allows you to get your own learnings. So what does it mean to embrace every aspect of yourself? Be it the ugliness, the mundane, the rage, the resentment, the joy of living, and the sorrow of having to continue knowing none of the feelings or emotions or anything ever lasts more than its momentary nature of existence. Maybe you have come to notice why trying to make anything last more than its required momentary nature only leads you further away from the very notion of trying to make it last. It shortens that experience. Everyone at a point in their lives when they're hugely disappointed by themselves or burdened by life or their past choices would have come to the age-old cynical view about themselves, and it starts with a simple question: what have I become? You will realize the further you go into such line of questioning and trying to define yourself into a category, it becomes absurdly hard to put yourself behind just one word. Furthermore, how does one even start knowing oneself? The very question, in what way do I know me? If you really go through with it, you will realize, in the words of Alan Watts, I know me only in terms of you. Think about it. How do you know you are a good person if someone else didn't give you the opportunity to act good? How do you know that you aren't a coward unless you are given an opportunity where you could act as a coward or act out of courage? Unless such things occur, one truly can't define things about the self. Most often, life gives tests first and lessons later. The ever-ongoing struggle with oneself on what one truly feels about themselves and how they have come to see themselves in every aspect of struggle, there is always someone else involved. Even if you were all alone, having never met anyone, and you had to define yourself or look behind what makes you you, it can only be explored if you take a step back and look at yourself as something other than you. One has to separate themselves in order to look at oneself. Thus, the notion of you being both separate and one at the same time is always looming. So trying to define me without also talking about the notion of you is like asking a question of why fire can't burn itself, why light can't illuminate itself, or how you can't bite your own teeth. The nature of role-playing games is obviously that the player goes on to role-play, make various choices in order to move along the story. The more choices we make, the more we get into a complex mix of tonic called life. Each choice is further connected to the millions of threads of other choices. Furthermore, what is the best choice? Disco Elysium plays around this notion very beautifully, and in doing so makes the player realize that maybe not every choice has to lead to some benefit or profit. Some are there just to keep things interesting. Has any one of you ever thought about why you think you have a much better concept of who you are, who you want to be, whenever you are in new cities or new places? It's because we want to start anew, obviously. But why is it hard to do so around your hometown, your family, friends, or the part of society you live in? It is obviously because you are connected to them in one way or the other. Imagine for a moment you are taking a walk on a Sunday morning, and your eyes happen to meet a familiar face or an acquaintance, one whom you are not too close to but also not completely cut off. You end up saying hello, what's up, and move along. But the scenario becomes quite different when you meet the same person in the afternoon again. This time you're not even sure if you should say what's up because you have already said so earlier today, but then stopping to say something else would mean you have to do small talk. But that is obviously not something you do because you two aren't that close. So what do most people, and at least as a man, what do? We nod, we acknowledge each other's existence and move on. If you think about it, an event happened, you made a choice, move along or stop for a small talk. Even if the case of not doing anything had occurred, the choice was still made. Disco Elysium has similar, minute interactions with various kinds of characters, and even though not every choice is meaningful, it does end up defining our protagonist, and in return you, the player, on what type of person you are. And these interactions Carry on just like real life. You could be an ace detective and a kind cop in the eyes of a small kid, meanwhile also being an absolutely hell-blazing societal maniac in the eyes of Grad, the manager of Whirling in Rags. And the beauty is that even if you don't make some of the decisions that the game actually wanted you to explore, events end up happening still. And each character has a separate outlook on how they see you, just like real life. Each scenario defines the protagonist differently. Now the question I would want to ask you, the viewer, is whose definition of you in real life do you really think is more correct? And then I ask you another question. How would you define such a being into words, who is not only different based upon the person they are talking to, but just to make it more complex, this you is also different based upon the conversations, the beliefs, the ideologies, the emotions, the intellect, the psyche, the physique, the time of the day, and who knows what other factors. At least someone else's task of defining you is still easier, for they only see one side of you, the side of you when you are interacting with them. But what about you yourself? Because you do know each side of your interaction, that you know you are different around one person and then another around someone else. What forms a complete picture of you? Which side of your definition would you pick? Most of you would pick the good parts but discard the ugly ones. Meanwhile, some of you will pick the bad parts and discard the good ones. And just to be more meta, how would your definition of you take into consideration the parts of you that is choosing to discard aspects that you don't see yourself as, even though you did do them, so they are in fact a part of you? Now I can go on and on, but I guess that would be enough to put a picture of you into perspective. It is complex. And it is sad that still we are afraid to embrace ourselves because of opinions of others, even though they can never be correct about you completely, like a half-truth. And in my opinion, half-truths are more dangerous than outright lies, because with lies, at least you know someone is lying, and you are able to make a correct choice based upon facts. But half-truths, they lead you astray. It is not lies that cause feeling of betrayal in us, it is half-truths. For example, Classier, Volition specifically mentions that she is telling half-truths. If before the tribunal you haven't arrested her, she ends up running away. And you find out she had lied to you, bringing in the feelings of betrayal. Meanwhile, let us look at Titus. Even though he is also lying, we never feel betrayed by him, because he never actually tries hiding that he is also lying. So even when we get to know the truth, we never get such a feeling. Then there is also Harry's previous partner, Jean, who instead of being a liar is a judgmental asshole, who sees no way of Harry ever becoming better due to his past years of work with him. Now all of us in real life must have such kind of people all around us. Now my question to you is, would you let them or their opinion affect your personal health? And the answer is obviously not. But we still, most of the time, allow these people to harm our mental health. And that is why we also have to embrace our dark side. I will be talking about integrating our evil later on, but for now, let's move on. Disco Elysium has brilliant characters that bring in all spectrum of human emotions throughout these interactions with them. Characters which are full of contrast, who are all over the place. Characters you can hate, dislike, be annoyed with, or even want to kill, literally. For example, the contrast between Harry, who is very unsure about himself, and everyone else around him, who seem to have a very clear idea about themselves and how they see Harry and others in Martinez. Let's start with Kim, your partner throughout the game. Unlike Harry, he seems to have got his shit together and has a clear idea about himself and his boundaries. He knows the kind of detective he is and the sort of beliefs he holds on to. The same is with other characters in game, be it the giant Mezerhead or the bookshop lady Plaisance. Meanwhile, Harry, having woken up from a drunken stupor, has amnesia, therefore is a blank slate, like a figure of a man with no boundaries to define where he begins, therefore ever so slightly always mixing with the background. And this extreme lack of definition of what type of person Harry might be allows the player to easily be able to see himself in him. Not completely, but parts that really relate to the player. For some it might be drug abuse, alcoholism, loneliness, heartbreak, even one's own racism, or how they make really absurd choices. Then there is the question of how Disco Elysium embraces these concepts. Let's talk about ideologies for a moment. No matter what side of ideological thought you are, be it left, right, center, or I don't know, square, all ideologies on paper are great, or at least the ones mentioned in the game. Most often they come from a place of genuine good that one can find within human heart for the benefit of other human beings. But all ideologies, regardless of how great they are on paper, once in the hand of the enforcer, be it the government, a dictator, a king, a union, an NGO, religion, or I don't know, corporation, sooner or later end up on the extremist side of things. And anything that is taken to extreme is bound to leave someone behind. There are no such ideologies, or ever will be, that allows everyone to coexist in harmony. For order and chaos, darkness and light, cold and warm, happiness and sadness, everything in this world comes in pairs. Just not me, I'm still single. Yeah. And then there is the concept of what sort of person Harry is. Is he an uptight, downright, honest-to-good, no bullshit cop? Or is he a suicidal maniac hung up on drugs, corrupt to the bone and selfish with no care for others? Or is he flexible in his beliefs and ideologies? Or is he rigid like a dying tree that cannot grow in any other direction? Disco Elysium tries not to ask these questions directly, but lets you, the player, explore it through its brilliant dialogue tree. Most dialogues in this game carry over. The other characters with whom you had these conversations with will remember who you are to them. Other than communism, which seems to be the favorite of developers of this game, most often the game never tries to pick a side for you, be it good or bad, sad or happy, drunk or sober, left or right, or downright center. Instead, it makes you go on questioning deeply about the nature of the sides you are about to pick, which in turn are also in a way your own psychological test, because what makes you choose one side over the other? That is to say, how you view the world from your perspective. By allowing you to embrace these sides, it allows you to see where you might fall in your own life, the biases you might have, the irrational choices you end up making only to lead you to embarrassment, or the absurd humor you might have at any given moment. And then is the curiosity of trying to do the wrong thing because you already know what is correct. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who tried picking insane dialogue options in this game, because they were the choices I most probably would never pick if I was in place of Harry. It's in these moments when I realize that what really makes a person boring is not that they are unsure of themselves, but that they are too sure of who they are. It is like life has come to a stop for these people. They no longer have the childlike curiosity to embrace the ever-complex absurdity. It is like they are a ripened fruit that has no taste, like a blade with no edge, a thriller with no thrill. That these people who are trying to embrace authenticity end up being completely unauthentic because every single move of theirs is already known, like a biological machine who acts good because it was expected of their programming, and not because they were truly moved to their core to do such an action. It is not to say these people are inherently wrong, they are not. It is because they exist that I can even see what makes people not boring. So if anything, I'm happy they do exist. Everything has its place in nature. So do they. It is such extreme contrast that really shines light on Harry and Kim's growth throughout the game. While everyone else is hellbent on their way of life, Harry is a fucking goofball. He takes himself seriously unserious. At one moment he can be a serious cop with extreme due diligence in trying to solve the case and being relentless in pursuit of the murder, helping locals and making a parent realize that they are too hard on their daughter. Meanwhile, on the other hand, he can be snorting speed, punching a different kid, running from the tab he owes to the hotel's manager, while flipping a double middle finger, Max Payne style.
Not so fast. You owe me 130 real.
One moment you're running like the wind. Then you've suddenly turned around and are giving him the finger, furiously, with both hands. Why?
You can also see him talk about semen retention with a giant tattooed race maniac, or end up dancing hardcore while having set up a nightclub in a church. Meanwhile, Kim every now and then also allows himself to be at least a bit more flexible and see humor in the way Harry lives and does his job, which ends up with him engaging with Harry in all sorts of shenanigans that you pursue through Harry. There is no end to what sort of character you want Harry to be forged into, or what paths Harry should embrace, but he is always sincere with whatever choices he makes. He embraces the absurdity not through the lens of black and white, but through 3 different lenses based upon whatever fits the situation best, black, white, or a mix of grey. That is why he's absolutely a lovable goofball. He's never rigid unless he wants to be rigid. Or just because you might end up with communism or sorry cop Copo type. Not me, I ended up being communist fascist with a superstar Copo type. I do be cool like that. It doesn't end up meaning that now he becomes rigid like other NPCs for the rest of the game and has lost all the humor within him. He remains as flexible as a bamboo, but also hard like one. And I mean literally.
Pardon? Yes, it is. The bulge in your pants is embarrassingly obvious. Relax. It's not that bad. Also, this means your blood flow is returning to normal. Good news.
When you look at the beginning of Disco Elysium, we start off with weird voices that we have no idea what they're talking about various puzzling things and going on about things like the pale, pitch black darkness, nothingness, and whether to wake up or stay in the eternal slumber of this nothingness. Of course, regardless of what dialogue option we choose, we wake up with our protagonist, whose very identity is like that of a blank slate, a tabula rasa. But by the end, these voices come to a unity of sorts, helping Harry to come to terms with all his pain. It's as if Harry has finally come to terms with all of his emotions, feelings, but most importantly, his own voice of reason, his mind. And there is no other game that I can think of that has such beautifully portrayed the psyche of someone who feels disturbed by their own thoughts. But the game goes further to show that the same thought or the ego can be put to rest and can be of benefit to a person if they allow it to work as it was intended. And no other character in this game is more profound than Volition.
The road to healing is going to be a long one. Stay the course. You will make it someday. Just remember that you've made it this far, and it's just a bit farther now. Let's finish this. I'm on your side.
The voice within Harry that is always there trying to keep Harry's spirit alive, telling him to stick by a little longer. Disco Elysium throughout the game makes your choices form into categories and makes you take path for Harry that you think defines him, or at least that seem fun to you. And the same should be in real life. Be free to embrace chaos, or free to embrace whatever other thing that you might consider for yourself. And don't be too worried or afraid how the world looks at you. Because at the end of the day, what matters is that you can do your duty while also living a life that seemed interesting to you, and that you are enjoying the company of this one person whom you are with 24/7. And remember, that person is not someone else, it is you yourself. It is the very act of embracing all sides of ours that helps you liberate from your pain. Can you truly form some sort of idea about yourself? But also remember, it will always be just that, an idea, nothing more serious than that. That you are free to even be profoundly sad and actually not feel guilty for having felt so. That you are free from your own condemnation. That you are free from categorizing yourself without a negative or positive connotation. For if you're able to name yourself and have some meaning attached to it, you have already put limitation on how far you can spread your wings, or if you even have wings. You are an ever-living thing who keeps changing moment to moment. To define yourself would be an injustice, but to come to such a conclusion without trying to define yourself first would be insincere as well. The act has to be one of wisdom and not of knowledge. Can you embrace yourself with all your flaws? Remember how I asked you in the beginning why you might feel much more closer to yourself when you are in an unknown place or a new city. It is because there you have no definition about who you are. The things you can embrace are limitless. You can be as happy as a giggle of a toddler playing with his mother's finger, or as sad as a man who just got his heart broken. It's the stage, and you are as much of its protagonist as you are its audience. The only difference is, can you play each part right? If you can, then it doesn't matter where the stage is, be it a new city, new people, or your old city and the same people whom you said hello to on the morning of a Sunday walk. What matters is if you can embrace all sides of yours, be it the one who wants to say hi, nod, or just move on and do so without ever the thought that you did something wrong. Can you be like Harry, who even with his flaws ends up doing what was required of him in the end? Can you do your duty given whatever life throws at you? And not the duty that brings in dollars, but the duty of loving yourself and embracing all sides of yours as if your life depended on it, for it does depend on it. Thank you and peace out.